Good morning and welcome to the Service Learning webinar. My name is José Luis Pau and I'm the head of the Innovation Unit at Universidad Autónoma de Madrid and leader of Work Package 3 in CIVIS, a work package that pursues the local engagement and territorial impact in our alliance. The main target of the work package is the development of a network of open labs across Europe that strengthen the relationships between the alliance and the local communities and enable the bidirectional dialogue between both. To feed that relationship, we rely on the preparation and incubation of innovative seed-funded projects through co-creation processes with our stakeholders. The initiatives should address the 5 CIVIS challenges with the aim of making the projects grow through the synergies among the different territories that allow us to build international consortia to provide long-run sustainability. The work package was planned under the idea of having a first open lab developed at Madrid to learn from that experience to later transfer it to the rest of universities. The establishment of the Madrid Open Lab took place during the first semester of this year, including different workshops with territorial stakeholders to define the areas that require prioritized action to prepare a formal call for proposals with external collaborators and university members. The proposals were evaluated according to the predefined criteria and selected for their execution. As a result, 3 projects have been initially launched at Madrid Open Lab dealing with territorial initiatives in sustainable mobility and circular economy, or providing educational support and legal assistance to different vulnerable groups with broad participation of external partners, academics, and students. Recently, we have welcomed 2 more open labs at University of Bucharest and University of Athens, which have officially initiated the roadmap towards the implementation of their projects. This webinar, hosted by CIVIS Madrid Open Lab, is intended to introduce the conceptual basis of service learning, as well as the key aspects for the design and implementation of service learning programs. The role of students and the pathways to achieve academic recognition will be examined to facilitate the development of programs within the Open Lab projects and beyond. Conceived inside the Work Package 3 as a tool to foster the university stakeholders' collaboration, service learning objectives are quite transversal in the Alliance and overlap with the goals of other work packages, such as the search for innovative pedagogies in Work Package 7, the strengthening of the relationships with African territories through Work Package 5, or the research programs and new studies deployed through the hubs in Work Package 4. Therefore, the importance of this tool for the Alliance is prominent. University of Tübingen and Universidad Autónoma de Madrid are working in a plan of activities with Alliance members and stakeholders to contribute to the vast adoption of service learning in our institutions. As part of those activities, it's my pleasure to introduce today our distinguished speaker, Professor Pilar Aramburu Zavala, from the School of Teacher Training and Education at UAM, working for the past 20 years on different service learning programs with university students. She's currently the coordinator of the service learning program in the School of Teacher Training and Education at UAM, president of the European Association of Service Learning in Higher Education, and director of the European Observatory of Service Learning in Higher Education. She's also an advisor to the Municipal Office of Service Learning of the Madrid City Council. Welcome, Pilar. Thank you for being here. During the Pilar presentation, please feel free to send your questions through the chat. I will share a question and answer session at the end, and I'll do my best to introduce all your questions addressed to Pilar. I'd appreciate it if you could add your full name and country of origin through the chat before any questions so I can follow up who's asking and from where. Dear Pilar, we're always in learning from you what service learning means and how it can help us to enhance our civic engagement. Please go ahead, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Jose Luis, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to present service learning methodology. Okay, so what I would like to do first is to frame this methodology. And for that, we're going to use the Sustainable Development Goals that the United Nations have specified and are disseminating, and they are reminding us that only the governments will not be able to face these problems, to solve these problems. So they are requesting everybody's help, everybody's contribution. All individuals, all institutions are requested to contribute so we can solve these problems. And universities, higher education institutions have a very special and very relevant role because we are a privileged. Universities and higher education institutions are a privileged institution, right? Because it's where we create knowledge, and universities create knowledge and transmit knowledge. And universities have students and have infrastructures and have lots of things to provide so we can face these challenges. Anyway, so we have a big challenge now, which is to integrate the Sustainable Development Goals in the curriculum. That's something that is being done, okay, little by little, and that is wonderful. This is what is called curricular sustainability, right? And it's wonderful that the Sustainable Development Goals will be integrated in most, if not every subject, in every degree, in every university in the world. But it's not enough. It's not enough. That's a big step, but we have to go a little bit further because this is not just an academic or a research issue. This is mostly a civic engagement issue. And for that, many of us are not trained. We teachers do not necessarily know how to develop civic engagement in our universities through our subjects. Anyway, this is not just the United Nations that are reminding us this very important message, but it's also, if we go to the Bologna Declaration in Europe, the Bologna Declaration is reminding us that the university has a key role in consolidating and enriching the European citizenship and the development and strengthening of stable, peaceful, and democratic societies. Now, if we go a step down to our own institutions, what you see now is the mission of the Autonomous University of Madrid as an example. But if not all, almost all mission statements in the universities around the world, right? You know, the mission statements are just a few words, 1, 2 paragraphs, right? And in those 1, 2, 3 paragraphs, we have the essence of the university, the mission, the reason of the university. Well, in almost every declaration of the mission of a university includes a reference to social responsibility, civic engagement, social action, applying to the society, connecting to the community in different terms, but all in the same direction. So the question is, if this is so important, this role of the university is so relevant that is included in those missions, in the mission of the university, we need at least to question ourselves, what are we doing for that? What are we doing to make that a reality? But a reality in our teaching, right? This is not that others will take care of that, right? Like some central units or some volunteers or some, no. What are we doing in every class, in every subject for making this real? This idea, we need to step down from our ivory tower, because many times, too often, community perceives the university, right? And so we should not continue with this. We study the world and others will go and save it, right? The idea that the college training and the civic engagement, social responsibility are two different things, are things that go up. This is something that we have to stop. Beacon, because the reality is that the university has a lot to give to the community, but the community has a lot to give to the university, right? The university, as I said before, has knowledge, right? Has students, has teachers, has infrastructures, has resources, right? And the university has to put all those resources, in order to help and contribute to improve the community. And the community give us to apply knowledge and also to acquire new knowledge, because very difficult to acquire through other, because in the real world, the problems are inter and multidisciplinary. And the opportunity to work with problems is, pedagogically speaking, very important, very relevant, and very rare. There are many things we can do in our classrooms to get closer to reality, to take to our students. We can do visits, we can work with problems, study cases, we can bring experts, but through service learning, what we do is that students learn working with the readers in the community and with the community, right? So pedagogically speaking, that is valuable. Now, in social psychology, they say that when faced with a crisis, humans tend to react in basically one of these three ways. One is you don't know how to, you cannot react. Another one is running away. It's a matter of surviving and instinct, and you run. Third one is acting. And this is where this methodology comes. Service learning is much more than a didactical, pedagogical teaching methodology. There are many ways in which we can, we can help our students, right? We can facilitate learning for our students. There are many methodologies, many techniques, many strategies, but there are only a few of them that have around it a meaning of what the world is, what development means, what justice means, what education, learning, and citizenship means. And this is the case of this methodology. There is an educational philosophy. More than that, there is a philosophy about the world, right? Because in service learning, for example, development means sustainable development, and justice means social justice, cultural justice, educational justice, economic justice. And education and learning is based on active learning, collaboration, values, interdisciplinarity, etc. And citizenship is perceived in this in service learning as active, participatory, democratic, critical citizenship. So what is service learning? And we start with an example. If students at the chemistry class collect trash in a poor neighborhood, they are working as volunteers. They are providing a service to the community, and this is wonderful, right? I wish there was more volunteering in the university. If what the students do is collecting water and waste, analyze it in the laboratory, and they draw conclusions and write a report about pollution, they are doing a practical activity, a practicum, well, any kind of practical activity. But when the students pick up the garbage, analyze what they have collected, and share the results with the neighbors, and provide suggestions about how to recycle and reduce the bills, and reflect on their learning and the impact of their service in the community, then we are talking about service learning. Something very simple, nothing even new, because there have been teachers and students working with this methodology, even without knowing that it was called service learning, or doing something very close to this, right? It's something very simple because it is learning by providing a service to the community. Few words for describing what service learning is. It's simple, but at the same time is very powerful, because also in a few words, let's check what we mean here. We are contributing to developing to the education of competent citizens that are capable of transforming society. Competent because we go to the university to acquire some knowledge and professional skills, right? But citizens because through service learning, we are developing a commitment and engagement in our students, something that will stay beyond the project, the experience, right? And we know this through lots of research, that when students participate at least once during their studies in a service learning project, the probability that this person throughout her life will work as volunteer, will serve the community, increases significantly. And this is just a little bit more sophisticated definition, which, as you will say, it says exactly the same we have been saying up to now. Service learning is an experiential educational method because it's active methodology. Students learn by doing, right? In which students engage in activities that address real human, social, and environmental needs from the social justice perspective. That means we deal with the Sustainable Development Goals, and we are not providing service with any entity or to any community, but to those individuals and those groups that are more in need, that are more at risk of being excluded, right, of social or economical exclusion. By integrating community service with the community to enrich learning in any degree, teach civic responsibility, and strengthen communities through action and critical reflection. That is what service learning is, and this is what is not. It's not volunteering. Why? Because volunteering does not have to be integrated in the curriculum. Sometimes it is, and in those cases, is service learning or is very close to service learning. It's not a practicum, because practicums do not necessarily have this solidarity aspect, right? Goal. So sometimes the practicums are very close to service learning, right? For example, if a practicum is being conducted as international cooperation, or it can be service learning or close to service learning, but not necessarily the fact that being a practical activity means that this is service learning. It's not a single-sided coin. As I said before, there is a mutual benefit, and this is very important. Reciprocity is a key aspect in this methodology, right? We are not working in a community or for the community. We are working with the community, and we are learning with the community. It's not only academic, and it's not only for young people, children in all educational stages, levels can practice this methodology. And now I would like to review with you some examples of service learning experiences. These are students in agricultural engineering in the subject horticultural farming that produce vegetables for meeting the needs of a community kitchen. These are students of mining and electrical engineering that work together with students from a professional qualification program who are young people who have not been able to complete the compulsory education, and they together provide advice. They inspect and provide advice on electrical supply in all apartment buildings that are in very dangerous and poor conditions with very old people in the center of the capital. In FIARE project, the students at the end of their career, right, in economics, they realize that nobody has ever taught them about ethical banking and decide to study it and design a campaign in the campus for disseminating it. As you can see, there are all kinds of examples. This is a methodology that can be applied in almost every subject in all degrees. These are chemical engineering students that are analyzing the quality of water in a village where there is a river that runs near a mine, and there is always this worry about the quality of the water for human consumption. There are projects also in computer science, working with the elderly. This methodology is also being used in training programs for people with cognitive disabilities that, as part of their training, provide a service to the community. So they are doing service learning, and in order for them to be able to do that, and to do that service, they need the support of students from the School of Teacher Training and Education, individual one-to-one mentoring. So there is a service learning project within a service learning project. Students from medical and nursing studies that go to the hospital, to the oncology, pediatric oncology unit for communicating with the children in a different way, just playing, singing, dancing, making them laugh, right? As part of their training in communication with the patient subject. In law, there are students and professors who are providing legal advice to individuals and disadvantaged groups in need of advice in all kinds of subjects. This is an example of a service learning project that has been developed during the pandemic. These are psychology students who pass a test, a questionnaire, and realized that a large percentage of the population was having, during the pandemic, was having problems with sleep. And they decided to act on it, and through the collaboration with two scientific institutions, they develop videos and resources, and also use through BioPills a blog dedicated to scientific research topics, So they disseminated some advices, some information about how to face this problem. And I would like to review with you now some theoretical and practical foundations of this methodology. Service learning is a table with 4 legs, right? Those are 4 elements sine qua non. In any service learning project, there will be learning objectives, right? And service objectives. What action is going to be given to solve what community need, right? And how we are going to learn, how are the students going to learn through that service? What knowledge is going to be applied and what new knowledge is going to be acquired. So the learning objectives, that means the contents and the competencies of the subject or the subjects or generic competencies are going to be applied. And so contents and competencies and how this is integrated with the service, right? You see the curriculum integrated with the action that is going to be provided. There is a 3rd leg in this table, which is participation. And this means 2 things. It has 2 connotations. One is in every service learning project, students and teachers need to question who else can participate in the project, even if it is a service that we can provide on our own, right? If we decide that we are going to, in a biology class, we're going to clean a part of a river or a beach, or whatever, we can do it. We prepare, ourselves, the training, the resources that we need, and we go and we do it. But if we want it to be called service learning, we have to question who else can collaborate in this action. Networking is very important in this methodology, and I'm not going to tell you how important it is, and pedagogically and socially speaking and professionally speaking, this collaboration with other professionals, right, is motivating, is very enriching, anyway. That's one concept, one connotation of participation. And the second one means the voice of the students. Participation by students, active participation in all stages of the project is very important. Sometimes this is not possible because, for example, if what you do is copy a project, then there is nothing to design. The project is already designed, so the students will not be able to participate from this first moment, right? But the basic idea, the general idea, if you want it to be called service learning, you do not have to call it service learning if you do not want it, right? But if you want to call it service learning, you have to make sure that students make decisions. It's not only that they act and they provide the service, no. The idea is that they should make as many decisions as possible. If they can make decisions in the planning stage, they should at least some, right? And of course, they will make decisions during the service, providing the service, and also in the evaluation process. This is really important. I don't have to tell you, we don't have time, but we could go into how important this is, all the learning that is implies, but also that it motivates and it commits, it creates commitment. And the 4th element is reflection. And this is the one that gives meaning to the others, right? Because action, and this Paulo Freire, the well-known, wonderful pedagogue from Brazil, told us that the practice is essential for learning, right? But practice without reflection, he told us, practice without reflection is very limited, is very poor, right? So here we have a lemon that we have to squeeze to the maximum. And this is the reflection element. When students become conscious of what they are learning, the impact that the service is having in them, in their learning, in their moral values, in their social relations, in their emotional development, when they are become conscious of the impact that the service is having in them, but also when through the reflection is when they become conscious about the impact that their service is having in the community. And that creates the commitment. So this element is really important. It's so important that when we plan a project, it has to be described. When are we going to reflect about what and by what means, right? Is there going to be an initial reflection, intermediate, final, individual, group, with the community, with representatives from the community, or with the final beneficiaries, with the teacher? It will be through a reading, a video, debate. All these questions have to be solved, have to be clear in the first stage during the planning, right? Because there are so many things that we can reflect about. For what we have talked up to now, you already realized that service learning is a methodology, is a very rich, pedagogically speaking, is a very rich methodology. It has so many elements, so many components, right? We can reflect about so many aspects, the learning, I think in the next, here we have, I put just some examples of some issues to be discussed at different times, right? We can discuss about the planning for the service at the beginning of the project, maybe motivation, expectations, concerns, prejudices. We can discuss about the relationship with this sustainable development goals, social justice issues, gender equality, public policy in the local context, how this group of people, how this community has reached this stage, right? Risk management, conflict management, so many aspects that we need to be very clear and systematize. When are we going to reflect about what? But there are many quality standards in service learning projects. Here I have included only a few. If we want to talk a bit, first I told you this is a table with 4 basic elements, right? Those are the really important elements. But then we can talk, if we want to improve quality, we can talk about many other issues. And here I have written 5 of them, right? For example, direct contact with the final beneficiary is important. But there are projects in which there is no direct contact with final beneficiaries, right? For example, when students from computer engineering collect computers and they work on them, they fix them, and then through an agreement with an association that has an agreement with the air company, send those computers to a town in Peru, for example. Our students, our university students, will not see the final beneficiaries of their service. And that doesn't mean that the project is not very valuable, right? So there are times when there is no direct contact and the project is very, very valuable. But in general, we know that direct contact with the beneficiary is motivating, and it contributes to creating this commitment, right? Meet actual real needs. What does it mean? Actual real needs. In service learning, we understand by actual need, a need that is perceived as such by the community. So it's not that we identify a need and then decide you have a need and we are going to give you this service to address that need. No, but the need, we need to make sure that the community identifies that as a real need, right? Include evaluation and documentation. And here I have, I'm going to tell you also that service learning at the university level has to be always recognized by ECT, by credits, right? And it has to be integrated in, if we're talking about subjects, in the syllabus. Why? Because the message that we want to give students is not that this is a complement to their studies, but this is a key element, right? And if we want to send them this message, we need to be coherent, we need to be consistent. It's not that this is very important, but it's not included in the evaluation of the subject. It's very important, but it has not credit recognition. That is not a good message, I think. So it has to be included in the syllabus and with credit recognition. Right? Sustainability of the project, and this is very important too, because this is not, okay, here we go, we have a semester, you have this need, and we go do the learning, provide the service, and bye-bye. Before we say bye-bye, we have to ask ourselves, does the problem persist? Does the problem continue? If the problem continues, then let's at least, right, think about continuing the project. Maybe we cannot do it, new students will do it, or maybe there are different ways of solving this. But if the problem persists, we should at least question ourselves about the possibility of maintaining the project. Offer adequate time frames. Well, we will continue. There are many types of services, and here I have included a short list, but then also to summarize, I included the Sustainable Development Goals. There are different paths that lead to service learning. And here I want to speak briefly about the open labs, because in a class, in a regular class, we can decide to work with this methodology for many reasons. Sometimes it's a student that proposes to do something. Sometimes something happens in the world, a war or a hurricane, or something happens that it just raises some worry in the class or some students. Or sometimes it's that you bring an expert from an association, like in my case, there was the Red Cross has a program for promoting success, school success. And they came to the class to speak about this program. And then at the end, they asked for volunteers. And we said, yes, okay, we will participate, but it has to be, we have to make it into service learning, not just volunteering, right? There are many ways, as I said. Sometimes you copy a project, or you jump into a project that is already on, or anyway, in the case of the CV's open labs, we have a wonderful opportunity to develop service learning projects, right? Because one of the goals of the open labs is to identify needs and try to co-create solutions together with the university. So in the open labs, we have representatives from all kinds of institutions, public, private, educational, businesses, as non-governmental organizations. So it's a wonderful opportunity for identifying needs in the communities and bringing together different institutions with the university to provide solutions, knowledge-based solutions to those local challenges. Not all the projects that will be developed will be service learning. It's not necessary either. It's not that everything has to be service learning now. The important thing is that we make sure that at least once in the entire career, students have the opportunity to work in a service learning project, at least one. And here, CIVIS and the Open Labs have the opportunity to provide those, those opportunities to the students. Anyway, as I said, not all projects that come up from the Open Labs will be service learning, but some should. Why? Not because this is fashion, right? Not because this is, I don't know, because service learning is really, truly a very powerful methodology that improves learning and contributes to developing this consciousness and this commitment in the studies. And it's a commitment that will last for their entire life. So it's really worth to at least try. And it's wonderful that the Open Labs are promoting the use of this methodology when possible, right? In any service learning project, as I said, this is a very simple concept, as I said. It's learning by doing, by providing a service to the community, as simple as that. But at the same time, it's very rich pedagogically speaking. There are many things that are being done there. For example, in any service learning project, it doesn't matter what the service is, and it doesn't matter what the learning is. In every single service learning project, students investigate, plan, act, reflect, disseminate, evaluate, and celebrate. They investigate, of course, if they have to do a mapping of needs, there is research on the needs. But as I said before, sometimes the project is already developed. There is no need to identify problems, right? But still, students will always have to investigate, for example, about how did this group, this community reach this state? How did they become like this? How did they, how come they got to the point in which they have this need, right? Planning, of course, like in any project. Acting, of course, they have to provide the service. Reflecting, we already mentioned something about this. Demonstrating and disseminating the project. This is a very specific component of service learning projects. The students not only do and learn, but they have to tell others. They have to disseminate and demonstrate that they have done and that they have learned. And this activity is, pedagogically speaking, very significant, because when students not only know, but they know what they know and the impact of their actions, and are able to tell the others about those learnings and that service, forget it. That learning is there to stay, and that commitment is there to stay, right? There is no, that's the most significant learning that there can be. When students are conscious about what they have learned, right? And they are able to tell others, adapting their language and their message to the audience, what they have learned, right? Plus, that requires collaboration, because, for example, if the students decide, in the planning, they decide that they will do a 2-minute video for YouTube, right? They have to plan about the whole structure of the video, interviews, permissions, photos, videos, mounting the whole, collecting every piece and putting it together, selecting, cutting, editing, music, making it nice, creative. All this requires collaboration, and all this requires so many different capacities, so many different intelligences and abilities and competencies that is really a very important element in the service learning project, right? Evaluation, of course, and celebration. This is also a specific element in service in this methodology, right? That we learn together, we act together for the community, with the community, and we celebrate it, right? Because in education and in higher education specifically, we forget this. We forget that we are together and we have to celebrate, that we are learning together and provide, in this case, providing a service together. Celebration then has to be planned also when designing a service learning project. How, when, with what means, that's something that has to be decided. Sometimes students celebrate with final beneficiaries. Sometimes we have a little bit of money and we can invite to a coffee to representatives of the entities and even final beneficiaries. Or sometimes we can only celebrate with our students. But celebration is something that has to be done. There are all kinds of service learning projects, big, small, projects with very relevant and clear service objectives and learning objectives, and others are, well, a little bit not so relevant and not so impressive. But the good thing is that all of them are service learning projects, right? If they have the key elements. We know through research, 3 decades of research, that this methodology has a positive impact in students, teachers, of course, the community, and the institutions, the universities also. And in this diapo, I'm only presenting just a summary of a meta-study conducted by Andrew Fulco on the impact in the students. And I want you to look at this because if you pay attention, you will see there that it has an impact in all aspects of human development, well, except physical development, but there are also service learning projects that take that component into consideration, of course. But any service learning project, just for the fact of being service learning, contributes to the development of academic and cognitive, civic, vocational, professional, ethical and moral, personal and social aspect components, right? Or I was going to say, oh, sorry, I can't come with the word in English. But anyway, I think it's just by looking at this diapo, we can say that this is a methodology that is worth to at least try, right? Also, these are the transversal or generic competencies that were developed for the European space of higher education. Right? These are the key competencies that all students have to develop at the end of their career, of their study. And if you look at all of them, you will see that almost, not all, but almost all of them are developed in any service learning project. The capacity of analysis and synthesis, organization, planification. Oops, sorry, it's not translated. Gestión de la información is information management. Oral written communication in a foreign language. Well, not all projects will deal with that. Knowledge of ICT, not all, but almost all. Problem solving, making decisions, autonomous adaptation to new situations, creativity, leadership, initiative, and entrepreneurship. Anyway, we can continue reading. You will see that just by the fact of using this methodology, we are contributing to the development of almost all of the transversal competencies. Guess, well, we already spoke about that, so I'll Okay, and another reflection that I want to share with you is that we learn even, this is the beginning. I say here, we learn best when we put into practice what we are trying to learn, right? And then I add, and we learn even more when the practice is linked to a social need. Why? There is no magic here, because it generates a commitment. Okay, we were talking about some pedagogical aspects of this methodology, and here there is another element. This methodology respects the differences in learning style. And I just put you an example when we spoke about the dissemination activity, right? In which we need people with different learning styles. You know, that each person has a different learning style. This is something that we teachers tend to forget. You know, we tend to forget that the students that are sitting in front of around us are very different in their learning and cognitive style. And we tend to believe that if we give them the same information in the same way and request the same from them in the evaluation process, then we are being very objective and very just, right? But we are not being just, because the reality is that we forget that what we all have in common is that we all are different in our learning style, our learning approach. So we need methodologies, you know, that are respectful with these differences. And service learning is very respectful, because we need collaboration for the learning and for providing the service. Learning by doing improves memory, and we don't have much time, but I will just mention that what you see here is a metaphor of the different types of memory. There is a memoria sensorial, I don't know how to translate that, memory. Then there is a short-term memory, which is called working memory, and also a long-term memory, right? And what we have in front of us is a small table, which is this short-term memory, is the one that you are using now during this webinar, is the one that our students use during our classes, in which there is a lot of information and the space is small, and when it's full, things start falling down, right? So what can we do to help students so that the information will not be lost, right? What we can do is, we know that using the information, when the students are listening in a passive way, they are not doing much, they are not being cognitively active. So this memory will soon be full and information will be lost. So what we can do is give our students the opportunity to do things with information. Do things means, for example, use the information for solving a problem, or analyzing or synthesizing or creating hypotheses, or relating the knowledge with another. Anything that implies cognitive activity will be good in that sense, and will help the students to organize the information so that it can go to the long-term memory in an organized way. And how to design a service learning project. We don't have much time, a few more minutes and I'll be done for your comments and questions. How to design a service learning course. This is in 2 hours, we cannot go into much detail, but at least we should know that, of course, like in any project, there are 3 basic phases, and in each one of them, there are specific stages. In the first stage, usually is the teacher. I mean, if we can involve the students from the very first moment, is very wonderful, but many times we don't have time for that. You know, for example, if we have a semester for a subject, if we do the mapping with the students, the semester can be gone. Anyway, so usually is the teacher who has a broad idea about, the social needs and how it can be linked to his or her subject and what kind of service, could be done. And well, it has to be decided where the service learning will be located in one or more subjects, a specific service learning course with credits just for the service learning course, not credits as part of a regular curricular subject. It can be a final dissertation, master's dissertation, bachelor's. It can be a practicum, extracurricular practicum. It can take many different shapes, but it has to be integrated somehow. And for deciding where to begin, 5 basic strategies that I summarize here start from experience that you have and is close to service learning, something that you have already done before. Copy a good service learning project that works, join a good project that works, identify social organizations that you are familiar with, or start from mapping the environment. Right? Then we need to start getting close, identifying partners, and start preparing the agreement. And the planning of the project, here still the teacher is the one that now, not just a broad idea, but more in detail defines the service, the learning, and the management and organization. And here we cannot take too much time, but there are many questions that we can ask ourselves that will contribute to defining in detail all these aspects about the service, about the learning, about any previous training that will be required, training during the service, evaluation of the learning, about the management, including the budget. And here you have a template, simple but complete template for the designing of a service learning project. If we fill out all these spaces, we know for sure that we have a service learning project. If we put the context, the background, if there are any previous experience, something close to this project, or this project is based on what previous idea. Anyway, also the social need address, the learning objectives, the link to the curriculum, the service objectives, the other participating entities, the network, right, the partners, the structure, reflection, evaluation, celebration, dissemination, chronogram, and also resources and budget. When we have this, we know that we have a service learning project. Right? Now, with the students, we have to prepare, for example, the motivation of the students. And we have to discuss with them the social need, the learning involved, the service activities. Of course, the students will carry out the service and will register and communicate and disseminate the project and reflect on the lessons learned from the implementation. And the closing with the group, there is reflection and evaluation of the results of the service, also the learning, also the sustainability of the project, and the celebration. And then the evaluation of the results of the service, of the learning process, of the future actions, and celebrate the finished project, if possible, with the partners and beneficiaries. And finally, the evaluation of the teacher, by the teacher that evaluates the group and its members, evaluates the project as a network, the experience as a service learning project, and also self-evaluation as the manager. And in 2 minutes, I'll tell you something about this methodology, the panorama of this methodology. The service learning started in the United States 3 decades ago. Soon, this methodology was very used in South America and in other parts of the world. And the last region to integrate this methodology was Europe. But what we have in this diapo is information from Talwar's network, which is a global association of universities that work in this direction of civic engagement. And these are just some of the regional, they have individual members, universities from all over the world, but also they have regional members. And here are some. Now the European Association is also part of the Talwar's network. So why in Europe, the last region in the world? Well, that's a good question. We don't have time to discuss about that now, but things have changed since 2014, when there was a European project called Europe Engage that did a mapping around Europe of what universities or what teachers were using this methodology. And then we started creating national networks, and then it was the foundation of a European association and the European Observatory of Service Learning in Higher Education. Also, it was the foundation of 3 European conferences. This year we had this one online from Bratislava, the 3rd European conference. The European Association is now becoming very active, growing quickly. We now have 88 members from 18 countries, 51 universities. The European Observatory is also very active in collecting. It's not easy because there are not central units in the university. Sometimes it's one teacher here and there. How to identify it is not easy. But anyway, we are little by little collecting all that information. And finally, a comment about the importance of institutionalizing service learning. And this is what CIVIS is trying to do by promoting the use of this methodology and by doing it through this work package. Is contributing to the institutionalization of service learning, which means developing administrative processes and providing resources needed to support service learning. So there is a need to make it official, put it into the strategic planning of the university, assigning resources, space, human resources, of course, etc. And that is an important objective. And in that sense, CIVIS is really contributing in a very significant way to this process, right? We have a dream that every university in Europe will provide the opportunity to the students at least once, as I said before, to participate in a service learning project, because it's really worth. So let's finish with this thought. What is the ultimate goal of education? Well, and this is very clear from the old times to modern times. Pedagogues are clear that the ultimate goal of education is none other than the good of mankind. And this is all. And I have, if we have, I don't know, please tell me if we have 4 minutes to see a video about the service learning project. We do? Oh,
sure,
great.
Sure, Pilar.
Yes, okay. It's a very short one, and if it's more than 4 minutes, we will cut it. Okay, let me tell you something. This is from the University of Ghent in Belgium, and is subtitled in English. I'll tell you that it's a project entitled Co-Creation, and they work together, students from occupational therapy and industrial design, with an association that identifies the needs of people with physical disabilities.
Het opleidingsonderdeel co-creatie maakt deel uit van de industriële wetenschappen, industrie en ontwerpen, en is eigenlijk een 12 weken lopend project waarbij studenten EO, ergo en individuele cliënten samen een hulpmiddel ontwerpen rond een betekenisvolle activiteit. De rol van de studenten industrieel ontwerpen ligt dan hoofdzakelijk in het materialiseren van die hulpmiddelen, prototypes maken als communicatietool. En de ergotherapeuten gaan vooral alles observeren en ook op activiteitsniveau het standpunt van de cliënt voor een groot stuk gaan bekijken en zijn rol daarin.
Wij hebben een jashulp gemaakt voor David. David is iemand die alleen woont en een beperking heeft, dus hij kan wel goed zijn handen en zijn onderarmen bewegen, maar zijn schouders niet. En een van de problemen die hij daardoor heeft, is dat hij niet zelf zijn jas kan uitdoen. En in het begin van onze opdracht hebben we eigenlijk samengezeten met hem, waaruit dat bleek dat zijn jas aandoen niet echt het grootste probleem was. Omdat hij altijd wel met iemand ergens naartoe ging, maar wel vaak alleen thuis kwam. Daardoor hebben we in het begin kunnen beslissen om enkel de jas uit te doen, waardoor dat we het product veel simpeler konden maken. En dat bleek voor hem ook veel belangrijker, dat het product niet opviel aan zijn jas zelf.
De persoon waar dat we eigenlijk iets voor ontworpen hebben was een klein manneke van 6 jaar en die is geboren met een open rug spina-patiënt. Dus eigenlijk alles vanaf onder zijn borst is verlamd, dus hij kan hem niet zelfstandig rechtzetten, zijn benen kan hij niet gebruiken, naar het toilet gaan gaat ook niet. En wij zijn daarop ingespeeld, we zijn direct beginnen prototypes maken. Direct ook de prototypes met hem testen, kijken hoe ver dat hij zelfstandig alles kan doen. En we merken eigenlijk zeer snel dat hij eigenlijk bijna niets kon doen wat wij in ons hoofd hadden. We hebben eigenlijk een strandmobiel ontworpen voor hem. En dat is een bakje dat hij dan in zijn handen kan nemen. En dan moet hij eigenlijk in een doek rollen. Rollen kon hij wel nog, met zeer veel moeite. En dan kon hij met dat bakje dat doek omhoog trekken en dan werd gevormd als een zitje. Waar hij dan comfortabel in kon zitten, dat hij er niet kon uitvallen. En zo kon hij door het strand gaan.
We gaan heel bottom-up direct met mensen met een bepaalde fysieke beperking gaan helpen rond problemen die ze zelf vaak al opgelost hebben, maar er niet in slagen om ze bijvoorbeeld te materialiseren. Dus die mensen worden zelf geholpen. De tweede plaats proberen we van alle oplossingen ook open bouwplannen te maken, zodanig dat lokale NPI's of andere NGO's die hulpmiddelen ook kunnen namaken. Dus dat die ook kunnen verspreid worden. En het derde punt is dat we eigenlijk ook proberen onderwijs en maatschappij ook voor een groot stuk te laten interageren met elkaar. Want studenten gaan heel concreet hun kennis proberen af te toetsen met de werkelijkheid en vice versa eigenlijk. Onze methodiek om te reflecteren is eigenlijk puur naar gedrag te kijken. Ze houden bij ons allemaal een blog bij. En een blog is een soort logboek waarbij ze echt dag op dag eigenlijk hun eigen ervaringen, maar ook nieuwe bevindingen, reacties, nieuwe prototypes, dat ze die allemaal bundelen.
En dat was eigenlijk een soort van draaiboek hoe dat we de evolutie konden zien en hoe dat we konden bijsturen op gepaste momenten van we zijn hier verkeerd bezig of we kunnen daar die richting uitgaan. Naast dus de technische ervaring die ik opgedaan heb en teamwork, het was met 2 personen dat we gedaan hebben, heb ik ook het sociale aspect bijgeschaafd. Het is een sociale interactie tussen die persoon, want je moet constant naar hem luisteren. Wat zijn uw eisen, wat zijn uw wensen? Je moet perfect kunnen zijn probleem ook omschrijven en daar een product rond ontwerpen. Dus dat was een heel andere aanpak dan de andere lessen die we kregen.
Meestal als wij op bezoek gaan, maken wij 5 verschillende soorten prototypes. En terwijl dat die bij ons misschien allemaal kunnen werken, blijkt dat bij de cliënt niet altijd het geval te zijn. En dat stimuleert ons ook om na te denken over hoe wij creatiever die problemen dan kunnen oplossen.
De einddoelstelling is dat de cliënt op een kwalitatieve manier terug kan participeren binnen zijn eigen context die hij zelf voor ogen heeft. Als je iets op een andere manier kan doen, is dat juist een meerwaarde en niet zozeer een negatief iets. En dat proberen we eigenlijk een beetje te beogen. Ja. En op het einde van de rit sluiten we af en krijgt elke cliënt zijn hulpmiddel en gaat die ermee naar huis toe en is het verhaal afgelopen, bij manier van spreken.
Thank you, Pilar. Thank you very much for this instructive and enlightening presentation. It's always a pleasure to hear you talking about the aims of service learning. If you agree, we can open the session for questions. We have interesting questions from the different universities. So we can start. Well, before that, let me tell you that some of you asked if the presentation and the recording will will be available at some point to all of you. I have to tell you that that will happen. Both will be available through the event platform where you have registered in. So don't worry if you have missed the beginning or a part, you will have the chance to review the presentation at any time. So we will make sure that everything works. In case you have any problem, just you can email us and we'll try to solve it. So concerning the questions, first question is from Son from Marseille. And she's asking the difference, Pilar, between volunteering and service learning. This is very important, I think, a key point. So could you tell us about that difference?
Yes, of course. Volunteering does not have to be integrated in the curriculum. There is not a need to identify the link to curricular competencies or contents, either transversal or specific to a degree or to a subject, right? So volunteering is considered a very relevant complement, but it's not essential in the training, in the education of the students, because it's not in the curriculum, right? So only students who are sensitive enough and have the initiative of participating in a volunteer activity in the university will have that opportunity. But when this is integrated in the curriculum, we are offering this opportunity to all students, not just those that have the initiative to go to the office of volunteering or social action, or however we call it in our university. And when we offer it through service learning, we are offering to all our students. For example, I'm a teacher in my subject. As part of, I use many methodologies, and as part of a subject, I tell the students that they have the opportunity, voluntarily, they decide to choose participating in a service learning project or doing a research project or a different type of project, right? And this is their own decision if they do one or the other. It's still volunteer, right? Because they are going to decide to do it or not. But I have offered the opportunity to all the students. They know in my class, right? So they all know that there is a possibility to learn about this subject through this service learning project. Of course, this is volunteer or not, because service learning project can be also compulsory, right? I'm saying that my students decide if they want to do it or not, because I believe, this is a methodology that is very much based on confidence, trust on the student, right? Students make decisions. So I don't think it's it's not a good idea to say, you are forced to do it. This is compulsory to participate in service learning project. Like there is something in the nature of this methodology that tells you, do not make it compulsory. But if we decide to make it compulsory, it's okay. Because we are in an educational institution. And then that backs up this the decision of making it compulsory, right? But anyway, going back to the question, volunteering is not integrated, and in volunteering there is no necessarily reflection. It can be, but it doesn't have to, not always. So students can do the service and maybe they have some reflection activities or maybe not. Here, it has to be systematic, right? Also the dissemination. When you do volunteering, you are not obliged to disseminate the service and the learning that you have participated in. Those, I would say, are the basic differences.
Okay. Thank you. Tiziana from Bucharest is asking also an important question about how the contact between the study program and the territory takes place. Who makes the first step? So how we can build that relationship in advance to get a nice service learning program out of it?
Anyone can take the lead and make a proposal. Like in the Open Lab, it can be any entity. It can come from the university, it can come from any social entity, it can come from a student. It doesn't matter who takes the first step, but someone has to make a proposal to put the idea on the table, and then we will start seeing, okay, what are the needs, how can be linked to the curriculum, what kind of service, and who else can collaborate, and all these other questions. But who takes the first step, who makes the first connection is not important in this case.
Okay. Well, sorry, Tiziana was from Sapienza, not from Bucharest, just to make it clear. Yeah, actually, I agree with you that the Open Labs should be an excellent tool, an excellent space to provide that relationship and to enrich the creation of this collaboration and activate it at some point. So she's asking also if there will be a digital platform. I can answer that question because we are working with Marcel to provide at some point that possibility. For the moment, each Open Lab should work with their own tools, but that's our plan in our roadmap is the design of a platform, participatory platform, where the territory can make their needs clear, and we can discuss as alliance, as a well, civic provider, let's say, civic engagement provider, the proper scenario to make it happen, to create these programs and be able to respond to those needs as soon as possible. Okay, but it's something that it will come in the midterm, let's say. Othon from Athens is asking, well, is actually reflecting a real practice in Greece. He's saying that there was a program for raising awareness on climate change in primary and secondary education. And as a result of the program, with the participation of municipalities and the help of engineers, the students in those schools could measure the environmental footprint of their buildings. And he's asking if that constitutes a service learning activity by itself, or it needs something else to become a service learning activity.
Well, we can go back to the elements of a service learning project. If there is reflection, if there is networking, participation of other partners, if there is dissemination and celebration, then it's a service learning project. If not, it's very close to it. But maybe it needs to be redesigned, to be reviewed in order to incorporate these other elements that are so specific of service learning. right? Reflection, for example, that's a very, very important one because it's what really creates the commitment. Okay, I can also share the presentation, the PowerPoint, if you want, not just the, if you want, I don't know. And also I can share a template. I mean, I know that the Open Labs have to start developing programs, projects, right? And we want some of them to be service learning. But I also know that this seminar is not enough, or could not be, is not enough, right? So if someone decides, okay, let's develop a service learning project within our Open Lab, let's make a proposal, they might need support. And CIVIS is still organizing itself to provide this platform and resources. And so in the meantime, we could find a way to provide support. You know, the University of Tübingen, the autonomous university, and have experience in this methodology. I cannot speak for the University of Tübingen, but I speak for ourselves. If someone needs support and wants just, you know, a backup, or is this a service learning project? I would like to do it. Is, you know, I have this idea. How could, I'm willing to check, you know, and if you, I guess you can find my email, or I will give you my email, or it's very easy. Is my name dot my last name and then uam.es. So if you have some doubts and you think I can help you in any way, please, I'll do everything possible. I cannot do the project for you, but I can check and tell you, you know, maybe consider this or whatever. But in the meantime, we can provide you with this presentation, with a video recording, also with a template that is a little bit more sophisticated and helpful than the simple template that I show you, because it defines what it has to be included in reflection, and then a small definition what to include, or that is. So maybe that can be useful too. If you want, I will send it to you, Jose Luis, and you will see if it is appropriate to. And also, we are right now developing with the University of Tübingen some materials, you know, a guide for what is service learning and how to develop a service learning project. And also there will be, but it's March, there will be another seminar in March that the University of Tübingen will do with our collaboration. And also I wanted to say, remember in the Open Labs, not all projects will be service learning. I hope that some will be, but the ones that will be have to be focused on, have to have the social justice perspective. That means it has to deal with vulnerable population, individuals or groups, right?
We have another practical question, and is how many students should be involved in the service learning project?
As many as you can manage.
Okay, but is there a minimum number or not?
No, one student, 100.
Okay.
No, as many as you can manage. Okay. If the project is very simple in the structure, maybe you can manage, and you have many students, maybe you can manage a big project with many students. But if the project is complex, do not jump into it with many students, because service learning projects take time. Remember, it's just, if you do it in the framework of your own subject, right? It's just one methodology, it's just one thing. There are many other contents and many other methodologies to use in this subject. You cannot take all the time. And service learning takes time, especially the first year. So start with a small project, you know, small project, and then there will be time to grow.
Okay. Are there a couple of questions also about the overlapping of service learning and other methodologies such as learning by doing, problem-based learning, project challenge-based learning? So all those terms point out in the same direction, or I mean, what are the differences between them?
There are many common elements among these methodologies: active, collaborative, centering the student, applying the transfer of knowledge, and service learning has some elements in common with one of them and other elements in common with other, right? For example, with problem-based learning, there are many common elements, but not always. Remember that service learning works with a vulnerable population, right? It provides, and also celebration, and all these elements that I said that are very specific of service learning do not have to be in other. But here, the problem is not the term. I mean, I don't care if we call it service learning or not. If it is volunteering with added reflection and celebration, and then at the end, what we care is not that we say we use service. It's good that we call it and that we have very clear elements, right? Service learning is already well analyzed, and the package is clear. It's good because we can. It allows us to communicate, right? It gives us the opportunity to know exactly what we are talking about. When we say service learning, we know it has to have this. If not, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. But let's be clear that it does not have this specific element, right? So let's use active methodologies. Let's work for the community. Let's reflect with our students. Let's work together with the community. And we should not be so worried about the terminology and if it is the same or if it is not, right? That's secondary. It's good to know what are the elements of this methodology, and then decide what I do is exactly or is close. Should I name it or not? Well, at the end, you are not harming anyone if it's not exactly, a good quality service learning practice and you call it service learning. There is no harm, no damage. Yeah.
Yeah, we have a question from Marlene, also from Athens, who is asking how to sustain the social bonds created through the programs over time. Because sometimes you create a program with a specific need for a certain period of time, but how necessary is to act towards the long-run sustainability of that bond created with the communities. So if you could help us.
Well, some projects do not require sustainability, are just one-time action and that's it, So it depends on the need and the type of service. But the question, as I said before, is that at some point students and representatives from the community and teachers have to think about this. Does the problem persist? Is the problem persist? Can we do something to sustain the project? And if we can do it, let's try to do it. Maybe the problem does not persist. Maybe it persists, but we cannot do it. For example, if this is a first semester, right? And we don't teach in the second semester. Well, maybe we can find a teacher in the second semester with this group of students that can relate to the service, to the subject, but maybe not. So what do we do? That's
those are questions that have to be, maybe we stop it here and next year we continue. Those are questions that have to be put over on the table and talk about, and then let's do our best. It's better to work with a semester, for a semester with the students on that problem that persists than nothing, unless it causes a damage. For example, we have a project of students from the teacher training that go to the jail, to a women's jail, and they are with the children, 1 to 5 year old children. And while the mothers do training, our students are with their kids, and also on the weekends they take them out through an association that already has all the permits. Okay, in this case, our students cannot just do the semester. And the association says, if you are going to participate in this program, in this project, you have to commit for the full academic year, because these are small kids with very little stimulation. You know, attachment is complicated. It's a delicate issue. You cannot just go do your hours and go back and go to home or to your class, right? Those kids need that you continue with them. So what we do is the students work within the service learning project for a semester, and then they stay as volunteers with this association, right? And then we are not responsible for that anymore, but they commit to continue as volunteers after the service learning. Anyway, there are so many different cases that have to be, just think about it and do the best. Do the best.
All right. Well, I think we have answered most of the questions. You can contact Pilar or myself at any time if you have any other doubt about the content of service learning. I'd like to finishing thanking for sure Maite Palma, who has been the main organizer of the event. If Maite is so kind to turn on her camera, it would be great. Thank you very much, Maite. I think you have done a great job, and we are very we appreciate a lot your support in this, you know, because it's not so easy to deal with the managing of all the things around the work package. So thank you very much, sincerely. I also like to thank our foundation at the Universidad Autónoma de Madrid for the technical support. The platform that you have registered in has been made in collaboration with them, for sure. They have helped us also to organize the framework for this virtual meeting. It's a pity we haven't had the chance to meet personally, but hopefully in the future, I hope that we can have that possibility done, because I think is the best way to interact and to actually understand better about the topic we are dealing. So if we have the chance in the future, we will meet at some point in some of our universities. Yeah, well, as I said before, you'll have most of the materials available through the platform of the event. So check it out. And if you miss something about what we have mentioned today, the presentation, the recording, or the template that Pilar was telling us, just send us a message. There will be a contact point also through the platform, so you should be able to reach us and to make any question about that. Thank you very much to all of you for attending, and yeah, let's practice service learning all along. Okay, bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.